Hello everyone, I'm David McQueen of Strategy Analytics, now part of Tech Insights, the research and consulting firm that developed the ROI calculator for AREA members. Today, I'm going to quickly take you through using the tool and some of the key features and pitfalls to avoid. Let's use some case studies as examples. We've collected over 100 case studies of enterprise deployments of AR and VR, and here's a few examples from the UK. Since 2019, Renault has been using AR remote support for technicians at its dealerships. This is a good case study as it lists a lot of the benefits they've realised. Increased productivity, in-person part inspections down 5-fold, faster warranty claims, improved customer satisfaction, and higher asset uptime with procedures that could see a van out of action for 2 days, performed in just 20 to 30 minutes. Interesting, they also have the reduced carbon footprint. This may have been a factor in securing investment from senior management. Building a business case isn't always just about the financials. The second example is Semco Maritime, a Danish company operating oil rigs in the North Sea. It's a similar use case, remote technical support. But here you can see the benefits don't seem to be so well reported, and the improvement in the uptime of machinery isn't included, for example. This final one is the use of AR in surgery. It's fairly typical of what I've seen on healthcare. On the one hand, because it's a clinical trial, there's very good data on specific improvements. So the additional visualization available to the surgeon reduces damage to nerves from 27% to 8%. However, again, typical of healthcare, other improvements are not considered. Does it prevent later complications? Does it reduce the patient's stay in hospital? Healthcare professionals are often very good at measuring certain aspects of what we might call their part of the business, but typically they have a very narrow focus. And what I've seen when collecting all of these case studies is that there's a lot of companies not measuring ROI effectively or even at all when deploying a new solution. The Renault case study is a best-in-class example for measuring ROI, with multiple metrics tracked and even thinking outside the box to include lowering carbon emissions. The surgery case study is an example of considering only your part of the business and not the broader benefits. And the Semco example has no metrics, and the company doesn't even mention what was presumably the main reason for deploying the solution in the first place, to increase uptime on its rigs. So let's move on to the tool itself now. There's 3 sheets to input data, and the first one is all about those returns, the business case. It's critical you consider all of the benefits like Renault, otherwise you're artificially lowering the expected return and you can't build a business case. The first part is about the end users, the people using the AR solution to begin with. How much time is it expected to save, or what's your target for time saving for the employees actually using the devices? Increased productivity is part of ROI. In the Renault case, this would be the engineer in the dealership. Now, this might seem quite simple, but in practice, this can take a long time to figure out, perhaps even requiring a time and motion study. Now, obviously, we don't have time for that this morning, but you can think about a sensible target for reduced time on tasks. In the second section is the time saving for managers. Does it save time for managers with better integrated reporting tools, for example? Input that time saving here. And the last part of this section is the impact on other staff. In the Renault example, that would include the support engineer. That 5-fold decrease in the number of dealership visits they need to make would factor in here. They're spending less time traveling and more time solving problems. Renault also noted faster warranty claims. What's the impact to the staff that process those claims? That could be included here. In the surgery example, they could have included things like reduced nursing costs as a result of a shorter hospital stay, or reduced follow-up care such as less speech therapy in this section. It's likely that the solution is replacing something. What are the cost savings associated with dropping that legacy system? There may also be reduced inventory costs. A more efficient solution should mean less waste and less inventory. For Renault, do they offer replacement vehicles when a customer's truck is in for service or repair, the equivalent of a courtesy car? If repair times have gone down from 2 days to 20 minutes, can they have less of these vehicles sitting idly in a garage? Does Semco Maritime need to keep fewer spare parts in inventory with a more efficient repair solution? The next section is how it might impact overall profitability. Ultimately, this is really just one cell, but there's a lot of components that could go into that. For a company like Semco Maritime, increased uptime of the oil rig will have a pretty direct impact on profitability. But for Renault, that might be harder to measure. How much might increased customer satisfaction reduce churn? So that's something that perhaps the sales team could help you calculate. Then we have auditing costs. Can the software record the time spent on a task? Can it track parts or machinery? Does it integrate with your inventory management systems? These features are becoming typical in AR solutions and can have an impact on reducing auditing costs. And finally, there's room for other factors. This could be the reduced travel costs. The earlier section on the impact to other staff would just take into account their time spent travelling, not any fuel allowance or other travel expenditure that's saved as a result of that. So that's the first sheet, and likely the one you'll spend the most time on today. Thinking through the costs correctly and accounting for all of the efficiency improvements across the business to building the business case. The other part, of course, is the costs. These might not be known at the start. Typically, you're going to get the data for these first software and hardware sections from quotes from potential suppliers. One very important thing to note up here in the software section, and it'll have a big impact on the ROI calculation, is whether or not there's an upfront cost to a particular software solution, or if it uses a software as a service model where you can amortize the costs over the lifetime of the solution. So depending on the accounting processes at the company and the software that's on offer, changing this can have a big impact on the business case. The next section is really the cost to deployment for your own employees. Deploying the solution, training the people that use it, and the ongoing cost to maintain the hardware and the software can all be accounted for here. For building a real business case, you would want to discuss this with the team that would be using the solution and the IT team here too. The final section, the consulting and professional services costs, again, data points that you're likely to get from a supplier's quote. The last sheet that requires your inputs is very simple, just a few cells. The currency, the tax rate, and then the last two cells, cost of capital and the lifetime of assets. That will depend on how your accounting department calculates capital and depreciation. So that's a very quick run through the ROI calculator. And the key takeaway is to try and think about and build in all of those different business benefits across your entire organization. I hope you enjoy the workshop.